out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Back here with Ed. Drew, we're missing Thomas today, but he'll be with us again next week. And holy shit, boys, lots to talk about, lots to go over. We had a very eventful Monza Grand Prix, Italian Ferrari home race. Like, there's so much to talk about. I want to jump in and get your thoughts really quickly. Drew, start us off. Quick takeaways from the race.
Yeah, quick takeaways. Fantastic that Charles Leclerc was able to hold on to the win with that super old set of tires. Hats off to him. That was a fantastic drive. He pulled off a successful George Russell. What George Russell attempted to do, but was underweight. He did it with the right weight. Good for you. Chuckles the buckles. Also, McLaren, what are you doing? What an absolute calamity that you've shown us in the last few races. You show us moments of greatness and then absolute debauchery. And I don't know what to do with you guys. So anyways, that's my quick takeaways. I'm sure we're going to dive real deep into all these.
Zach Brown wasn't listening to the last episode. I'm already sure about that. He wasn't listening. Or
what was it, subscriber number like 49 or something like that? Didn't you see him on the list?
Yep, I did.
Yeah,
yep.
Drew, he missed an episode clearly.
Yeah. I mean, come on, and like we'll get into it a little bit further down. But yes, definitely an eventful race. Ferrari came in clutch. Did a lot of very, very interesting moves at the start of the race, especially like putting them into the pits very early on because of signs from a different team struggling with hard tires. But yeah, Charles Leclerc pulling it across and just like taking the win. So yeah, definitely a lot to unpack today.
So I feel like we could look at this race in two separate ways. On one hand, and there's so many storylines, we haven't even touched on Mercedes, we haven't touched on Red Bull. There's so much going on here for this race. But I think there are two really key ways we can frame this race. And is it that Ferrari won this race or did McLaren lose this race? And we'll look at it from both angles, because let's start with McLaren. Starting 1-2 on the grid, clearly, seemed to have the most dominant car for the weekend. But somehow, we've touched on this a lot, and I feel like we keep going back to this recurring theme of, knowing how to win and being like a polished team, from the strategy to the cars to the drivers, to really maximize on the equipment and the talent that you have. So, in your opinion, Drew, was this a case of Ferrari winning the race, or did McLaren lose it?
I think this is a McLaren loss. McLaren had this race in the bag, and even when you had Oscar and Lando out front, to pit them both was ridiculous. Like, even if you're like, we don't know if these tires are going to last, it might be unsafe, or they might not have any tread left on them at the end. Let's pit one so that you can cover off and kind of hedge your bets. But like, when they pitted both, it just didn't make sense. And then the timing of those also didn't make sense, because if you were going to try to push for the one stop, then you asked Oscar, like in lap, 40 something, you're like, hey, can you make these tires go to the end of the race? And he said no, publicly on the radio. Now Ferrari knows you're not going to go for the one stop, and they were just going to hold off for a little bit. And like, Leclerc knew his tires weren't there. Like, I don't know if you guys saw those images of what was left of Leclerc's tires. That guy was blessed to make it back to the winner circle. That was crazy that he made that happen. But I saw an interview with Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton even noted, he's like, man, when those McLarens passed me, I knew that they weren't going to be able to make it to the end on those, because they were pushing way too hard for that to be a strategy. So that means McLaren going into it had no intention of even thinking about the one stop, even though that was definitely a conversation that all these teams had. And, like I said at my previous point, if you were going to go with your 1-2 guys, at least pit your second guy so that he's going to get a fresh set of tires, and then let your number 2 guy go first. Like, what? I don't know. I think to summarize this, to answer your question, McLaren lost this race, and they lost it hard. And they lost it because of a stupid call, obviously, that they were not making or not paying attention to what Ferrari was doing, but also they're botching the constructors and the drivers championship pulling this shit. because Lando would have been 19 points. He would have gained 19 points over Red Bull and instead only gained like 8 or something like that, which is ridiculous. And I know that, McLaren said earlier on that, we have 2 number 1 drivers. There's no number 1 and number 2. Sure, whatever. I don't know what's in Oscar's contract, maybe. But ultimately, you have to start deciding whether or not you want to win the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship, because Lando needs every single one of these points. We're running out of races, and we can't say for certain that Red Bull is going to be this far back every time. This was a golden opportunity to get some serious points, and they threw it away. And for that, I say enough out of you. Enough out of you, McLaren. Papaya rule.
I think we're gonna touch on the team dynamics as well, because I think that's a whole other layer to this onion. But Ed, really quickly, or not so quickly, did they win? Did they lose it? Who really determined the outcome of this race?
Well, like Drew put it ever so clearly in terms of what the issue was, but I'll add to it a little bit more. One of the reasons why, and let's start with his point from Lewis Hamilton's interview. They were racing that they were not going to make it to the end. One of the key reasons why this is going to be a downfall of McLaren is they're running both horses. They're running both Piastri and Lando Norris against each other, but sidelining them and holding them back because of the Papaya rules. And one of the things that will always have an issue when it comes to drivers and them competing against each other, especially after what happened when Piastri made the pass on Lando on the first lap, turn 4. Lando was beside himself in terms of like what the race was going to be. He was driving angry. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to, like, what is the reason for him to be the driver that's going to possibly take the fight to Max Verstappen and, become a driver's champion? And then on top of that, he's now trying to think, I'm not only going to be defending myself against Ferrari, against Mercedes, against possibly Max Verstappen. Now I'm going to have to defend against my teammate too. So it's just like, where's the support there? How are we going to win? So that's the side of Lando and Piastri. Piastri in a sense too, I just have to add this as well. His what do you call this? His manager is Mark Webber. Mark Webber we all know, didn't want to be second fiddle to Sebastian Vettel, and as you said, Drew, like there could be a little a line in his contract that he can't be second fiddle. So that's another thing as well. The other point that I wanted to make too was that because of all of this that's happening, Zach Brown and the team, they're so focused on constructors. When exactly to your point, that they could have won both the drivers and the constructors at the same time had they, reined in the drivers. Let's get Lando into the end. Let's get him to P1. We'll get Piastri to P2. And then, drive cohesively as a team and get the number 1 race or get the number 1 win. But that didn't happen because Papaya rules. They have to align. That's basically what it is at this point.
I think you're exceptionally upset right now because these actions are putting in jeopardy your
predictions.
Your Oracle,
exactly.
Your Oracle predictions. I was going to get to that. It's not a good look for you right now. So I can understand why you're a little heated.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like at this point, they have the fastest car. Everyone agrees to that. Every single pundit in the entire planet now recognizes McLaren as the fastest car in the grid, hands down. But what are they doing?
So let's ask that question. What is the McLaren problem right now? Let's go over all the main elements. Is it the drivers? Not necessarily. Oh, what's that? I got a little bubble next to my head. Is it the equipment? Based on what you just said, Ed, like they are the fastest car on the grid right now. Is it management, strategy. You know, when you look at those 3 areas of success, if you want to call it, you know, it's clearly the management from the top is not managing the situation. You know, whether it's the strategist, and you talk about, you know, Piastri's radio call with, you know, a few laps, what was it, like a dozen laps left or 15 laps left, where he came in and they asked him if he could make it to the end. And he said no. And, you know, at some point, and you see this a lot of times with like Bono and Hamilton, you know, at some point in the garage, they have a lot more information in their hands than the drivers. At some point, you know, that strategist has to come up and be like, you know what, there's zero chance we're making up, you know, 2 seconds a lap on average to catch him if we come in, or 1.8 seconds, whatever it is.
And have to
you need to stay out there.
Max Verstappen somewhere in the middle.
Like, you got to stay out there and you got to like make this shit work. Right. And it seems like the team on numerous levels is just being egregiously mismanaged, from a talent standpoint, from a strategy standpoint. And they're taking this golden opportunity, which, you know, doesn't come along very often, where you have great drivers, dominant equipment, and not taking advantage of all the points that they could potentially extract from that race.
I think they have the age-old problem, which is in trying to make everybody happy, you are going to make nobody happy. And ultimately, you're going to, you know, make sure that either McLaren does or doesn't win the constructors, but you're absolutely cementing in the fact that Lando's not going to win the drivers' championship. And what are you going to do? Are you going to wait till Oscar mathematically cannot before you start calling, you know, number 1, number 2 driver? Like, are you going to let it get to that point? I just think that management is fumbling this to a point where it's embarrassing. And I haven't seen anyone defend McLaren correctly, like at least effectively, like, because nobody has talked about this on any social media, any news, any Formula One, anything has been like, oh, this is why McLaren made that call. This was why this is the smart call. Nobody's agreed with them. This has been a dumb play all around. And like Will Buxton lost his mind in the after show. It blew my. He's a pretty level-headed guy. I haven't seen that guy lose his marbles in a few, but yeah, he was losing his mind, and rightfully so. And I think that you know, when you push a guy who's pretty even keel to that point, I think that's just more proof that you guys are shit in the bed.
Yeah, they've lost it. Like, it's honestly, like, it's now being handed to them. I even said that they were gonna win, but if they continue doing this shit, it's over. Like, they're not gonna win. Ferrari, they have pace again. We all saw that, and now they have fantastic strategy. They're making decisions, calculated decisions, based on data, based on what other teams are experiencing. They can run away with this too. So, like, it boggles my mind. I feel the exact same way as Will Buxton. It's like, it's all there. All you have to do is take it. And to answer your question to Walker, based on the 3, yes, management is an issue. With the drivers, not so much. But there is a problem with Lando Norris. The reason why he was, Piastri was able to overtake him in the De La Roja corner, the killer instinct. Like, all he could have done is let off the brake a little bit more and drive Piastri into the runoff, and he could have taken first place. But no, he stayed on the brakes because, again, Papaya rules. But then again, he doesn't have that killer instinct too. Like, he's being passed by another teammate. He's being passed by another driver. He's not taking it. That's why people called him Norris no wins.
You know what? I'm going to defend Norris here, though. You know what? I think Norris was playing the big boy game because he saw the long play. Because what was his alternative? Letting that happen, getting a little contact, and now your 2 drivers are out and out of the points? Or would he concede and play the long game? Like, to me, I think Lando Norris was the bigger person in all of this, because, like, in that inside corner thing, when Oscar went on the outside, if Lando wanted to play the Max Verstappen game, he would have just drove into the side of them and been like, well, it was my corner too. But that's not the game for McLaren. And so he was thinking bigger picture, where Oscar has way less to lose. Right? If that happened, I think Oscar would have got out of that without a slap on the wrist. Where I think if that contact happened, Lando would have got shit on first. And I think he was smart to that and knew that would have been the consequence for him, and he played it safe. And I don't blame him.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit further, because I think, you know, this dynamic that we're talking about between two drivers who are immensely talented, who both have potential to be number one. You know, in this position right now, obviously Lando is ahead. He is at least in terms of points, the number one driver on that team. Looking at Oscar, you know, he comes off as this like sweet little, you know, even keeled Aussie, but you know, he's got like a bit of a killer instinct in him. And my question to both of you is, you know, in this scenario, first lap, what was it, second chicane or something like that, is this the right time to dive in on your teammate and use the excuse of, you know, killer instinct? Or are you there to also play the team game and set up like a nice 1-2? How do you want your driver to react and act in that scenario?
If I was in that situation, I would have had this planned out beforehand. Like, that conversation with Lando and Oscar would have happened beforehand. Oscar would never have been dive bombing. His goal was to keep everyone back and let Lando take this, and then allow Lando a little bit of extra time. So if there was a pit stop botch or any of that kind of stuff, to play that out, and also gauge the tires and to see if Lando could, in first place, pull a one stop and make it to the end. And then if that wasn't the case, have Oscar pit so that they knew what that changeup was going to be like, just to play the strategy out, to hedge their bets, like I said earlier. And that conversation would have happened way before the race started. And that would have been very clear rules, because that's playing the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship. And that is what McLaren needs to do, because it's been a long time since they've stood on that top step. And they, for the first time in a long time, and how long until they do this again? You have no idea. But you have a golden opportunity right now to run with it, and that's what should be taken into consideration. I don't think Oscar, in his one season, has earned the ability to do that yet.
So let me ask you this then. There was obviously no contact, but is that a quote-unquote clean pass on your teammate?
I think it was a dirty pass. I think that was a Max and Lewis pass, and that was Max on the inside, and I think, or on the outside, and I think that was Lewis conceding because he didn't want to take himself out of the race and saw the bigger picture. That's how I see it. I think if Lando was pulling that, I don't think Lando would have pulled that move.
Well, according to Ed, that's because he's a pussy.
We are what we eat, buddy. guess that's why Ed's such an asshole. I got to make a mildly racist comment right now, and you look hella Asian right now, because like
that's okay.
Your thing, your like little screen is buffering, and your eyes look so Chinese, like they're so slanted right now. I can barely see them, and then you get the man bun on top, and you look like a Ferrari sumo wrestler right now, and it's fucking killing me, bro. That's why you see me grinning, and I'm like, well, I can't control this. It's hilarious, bro.
And on that note, I want to chime in on what exactly you said, Drew. To quote the great Ayrton Senna, if you're no longer racing or reaching for the gap or trying to get to that gap, you're no longer racing.
Paraphrasing
I'm paraphrasing, sorry. Not quoting, but paraphrasing. So, I mean, if you wanted that corner, regardless, exactly what you said, like Piastri does not have the, what do you call this, the seniority to do that dive bomb. And if he does that, you let him know where his place is and you take him into the side. You take him into the runoff. At the end of the day, killer instinct will be killer instinct. If you want to win the race, you run for that gap and you take it. If you don't want to take that gap because of team, fine, team what it is. But you'll see the greats they will always go for that gap. They will always take that corner, and they will let. I mean, a really good example would be team orders in Red Bull. I think it was 2019 or 20. Oh no, no, not even. I think 2012 or 2013 between Red Bull again between Vettel and Mark Webber, the multi 21 situation. Mark Webber was ahead, and Sebastian Vettel was in the back, and there was a big gap between them and the rest of the pack. Team orders was Mark Webber was going to stay ahead. But Vettel, being the killer that he is, the champion, 4-time champion that he is, nah, I'm going to take this win. I'm going to take the points. I'm going to take the win. So if you want to be a winner, you want to be a champion, you got to take that. If you don't want to take it, stay on the sidelines. You're no longer a race car driver. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So we're prefacing this whole conversation in that, you know, killer instinct, and you know, you're a competitor and you want to win and you're a race car driver and blah 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 blah. But let's take Norris and Piastri out of this equation. All right, we take the same corner, same move, and we put Max and Checo. Same argument doesn't fly for Checo.
It does not.
It does not fly. But like, oh, he's a competitor. He's not going for the gap. He's not a race car driver. That's not flying.
No, it'd be no bueno for Mr. Checo.
So there's a double standard here in that, you know, we are perceiving Piastri to be, you know, a quote unquote number one driver, right? And there are very few teams on the grid where this, you know, would pass, where he would get that kind of excuse. Even look at Ferrari. If that was Charles and Carlos, same scenario. If Carlos is going into the side of Charles, right? Like, does he get that excuse as a, you know, just a killer move, killer instinct because he's a race car driver? Maybe because they're a little more even, but I don't think it's as simple as just being like, if there's a gap, you go for it, especially when you're in the position to win championships, both driver and team. And yes, it's an individual sport, and yes, these guys are egotistical, and yes, they are selfish, and yes, they want to drive for themselves. But at the end of the day, they are employed by a team. And, you know, we'll look back at Mercedes when it was Lewis and Nico, right? And they sat down and they had very clear rules of engagement. And, you know, they can call it Papaya rules, you know, whatever that means. And you guys were both laughing at the name because you thought it was stupid. I feel like if it worked out, it would just be like one of those. I feel like it would take on a legacy of its own, because Papaya rules can either sound really good or really stupid, and just the way it worked out,
it sounds so dumb now. Yeah, it sounds so
dumb.
bad. So there's just nothing tough about Papaya rules. You know what I mean?
Which
like,
is kind of the tough
like
part
Hammer
about
Time. That's gangster. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's, you know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, it's Papaya rules. Like,
like the Orange Crush.
Yeah. See, that's marketing. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, they did choose papaya as their color, but
I know.
So, but I think it's, you can't just paint it with a broad brush saying that if there's a gap, you go for it, because it's not that simple in this, especially in this case.
No, because it's so touchy right now.
Yeah.
Like, they have that chance. Like, there's a very small window that's opened up for them right now, especially because Ferrari's shitting the bed and Mercedes wasn't looking particularly strong. And then Max and Checo are both struggling. Like, there is a very brief window where this exists for you to get those opportune points. And they squandered them. Yeah.
And you know what? If I'm Lando, like, he was a big boy about it. He was like, listen, the guy passed me. He ran a better race. Whatever, he deserved it. Like, he wasn't complaining. But like, if I'm Lando, I'm fucking pissed right now.
Cheesed.
Because I am like, I've been with this team for what, 6 years? However long it's been.
Been the worst car.
They
garbage.
were shit for like 5 of those 6 years. I had chances to go to Red Bull. I had chances to go to like who knows where else, like Mercedes, all these other teams, because he is a, you know, touted number one driver, and he's stuck with these guys. And he saw it through, and he waited until they were able to develop a competitive car. And now that they have it, and now that he's here and he's in this place, you know, to compete for the Drivers' Championship, they were being like, well, I don't know, guys, just race fair, Papaya rules. And it just, it would just piss me off so much.
The social clips for this episode are going to be fucking fire.
Given like what we, what he's put into the team, I do think that the team, if nothing else, they owe him like absolute clarity on how things are going to work. And maybe they've given that to him and and it's not what he wants to hear, but like they got to back this guy a little harder, and they got to tell Oscar to like sit the fuck down and just like, you got to play the team
Wait your
game.
turn.
You wait your turn to an extent. Yeah, it sucks. We know, but like he's been waiting his turn for 5 years, and now he finally has a chance. And you have a gap, and you want to go for it just for shits and giggles because you're impatient.
Yeah,
fucking figure it out, Oscar.
Okay, take all this aside.
Yeah,
Oscar's a good driver though.
He's a great driver.
Yeah, he's going to be money. Yeah. I think he's going to be a money driver. I like him. I like everything about the kid. Maybe the fourth corner choice was maybe not for me because I think I see bigger picture, and I think Lando deserves a little bit of this, but also, fuck you. Great driver.
Big picture, I like Oscar.
Yeah.
Big picture, I do. I just think,
killer. He's a
silent,
he's a monster.
Given the, if we're looking at it like situationally, it's up to management to get their shit together. We spent a lot of time on McLaren. Despite McLaren, quote unquote, giving away this race, Ferrari and Charles still had to run a mighty race, and he had to drive an incredible drive. We have our little Buddha in the Ferrari gear clapping his hands right now. Do you want to start us off? Do you want to hail praise on Charles Leclerc?
Oh yeah. Actually not just Charles, but the strategy. It's just like it was the perfect storm of a fantastic race that just like, he deserved this win. To win it at home, to win both his races for the season, both his dream state races, Monaco and Monza. Fantastic. Like I could not be happier for him. I could not be happier for Ferrari. For the Tifosi, they were just like all over themselves. I'm surprised there wasn't a riot after. But the response to Red Bull having a struggle with the hard tires, pitting him early, and staying through the race once he saw both Papayas go to their pits and having clear air. That was his like. He said that in one of the interviews. Like once he had clear air, he was able to hunker down, keep pace, reduce the amount of deg that he was receiving. He was getting from his tires. But we all know, we saw the pictures. You mentioned that earlier, Drew. But again, a masterclass of just like strategy, working with what you have, and taking it home, taking it to Monza, taking that number one step. Fantastic race, Charles. Hats off and big ups to you, guy.
Well, yeah. Again, like we said at the beginning, I don't know if Ferrari won this race as much as McLaren lost it. I think Ferrari did a great job on their strat call. I think Charles drove absolutely perfectly in order to get that car to where it needed to be by the end of the race. But ultimately, I think Ferrari needs to pick it up a little bit. I think they put all their eggs into the Monza basket. I'm nervous about their next race because now they have a lot of straight line speed, and I don't know if they're going to have the chops at Baku. Just like they did for Monaco so that Leclerc could win his home race, they really tuned their car for a specific track. And I think they did the exact same thing at Monza because they wanted this glory win. And let's give a shout out to Juan Carlos at the Ferrari. Did you see all his Instas? Like being right in the Scuderia, like in the Tifosi. What a moment that must have been. I was chatting with him a little bit while he was down there. And the whole Scuderia Ferrari Club of Toronto that bus was popping. So I can only imagine those guys having a blast. And I think that I think that Ferrari turned it up so that they could have a win at Monza, or at least have an opportunity to win at Monza, and they did. They pulled it off. Fantastic to them. Just don't think that it's a long game for them. I don't think they are where they need to be. And unfortunately, George Russell got a little bit of contact going in the first lap, and Hammy just wasn't looking super spicy this weekend at all. So, yeah, like I said, this was McLaren's opportunity to shine, and I think that I think Ferrari still has a lot of work to do, but it's nice to see Ferrari on the 1-4, because obviously Carlos did a stellar job with the drive as well. So yeah, hats off to Ferrari, man. They did a great job. Big W this weekend.
Big W, and I think this is a nice culmination of a few solid performances from Charles. He's had like a bunch of podiums in the last few races, and he came in here and just like slow and steady, not slow, but he was just like, he was consistent.
Consistent.
It was very much like, Mercedes last year, right? They kind of snuck up on everybody in the second half of the year and were just consistently there, and that earned them second in the championship in the constructors. And they were there. And I think, did McLaren make some mistakes? 100%. But, it's like when George won that race, where was it? Oh, I can't think of it right now. I'm blanking. Earlier in the year, where who crashed out? No, who crashed out?
Oh, that was Max Verstappen and Lando Norris.
Yeah, thank you. When they both crashed out in Austria, I think it was, right?
Yep.
And George kind of like sailed home into the wind.
Right.
You got to be there. You got to put yourself in that position. And he was there, and he managed it well on old tires. And hats off to Charles. Hopefully, to your point, they can continue this momentum. They brought like a big red package to the grid this year, or to the grid this week. So we'll see if they can carry on some of that performance. This is a good segue into another segment we like to do on here called, you want to do it, Drew?
The mailbox box. Hell yeah.
I was actually
you know what? It was funny that you said that, because I was just thinking, I'm like, this is exactly what you know what? Let's stop it here. We have a segment called Mailbox Box. We got a bunch of people in the Discord channel in the mailbox segment, and they throw out some questions or comments or things that they want us to discuss on the podcast. And this week we have our boy Mike Zanin, and he says, do you think that the race for the Constructors' Championship is coming down to McLaren and Ferrari, seeing how the middle part of the season and they've made up most of the deficit in points? Or is it still a 3-horse race? I'm assuming he also means by Red Bull. So immediately, I don't think it's a 3-horse race. I think it's a 2-horse race between McLaren and Red Bull. I don't think we can count Red Bull out yet. And I also don't think Ferrari is 2 cars strong enough to make up that deficit, assuming McLaren and Red Bull stay on the same trajectory. My quick 2 cents.
My point of view I would need to look at how Ferrari performs in Baku, but they perform the exact same way here and then the rest of the other races, and not pull a win in Monaco and then just be like,
I cannot accept this answer. For the self-proclaimed oracle, you're like, well, if they do,
we'll have to wait and see what the next 3 races do, and then I'll let you know the answer.
No.
But if they do really well,
I'm so glad you said something. I'm not letting this happen. It can't.
Yeah, let me finish. If
they perform well for the rest of the season, they could really spice things up there.
Let me finish. I didn't even finish it.
Oh my God.
As I was saying, if they do the exact same thing from Monaco and then Monza again, not gonna work. Like, if after the race of Monaco, what happened? Like, they put so many, definite fall off. Like, and the thing is, with this situation right now, they won it, and to your point, Drew, they won it because McLaren lost it, and they have straight line speed, and Baku is the place for you to actually go hit the straight line speeds. If they can prove it there, it's going to be a 3-horse race. But if they can't prove it in Baku, and that's the reason why I'm saying Baku is the tipping point. If they can't prove it there, that's it. They're done. It's going to be Red Bull and McLaren, because the Festival of Speed, great, or not Festival of Speed, like the what's the term for Monza again? Anyway,
Temple of Speed.
Temple of Speed. Thank you. So same thing with Baku. If they can keep the pace, keep the momentum, keep the strategy, great. I can say that it's a 3-horse race after that, because this could be another fluke again. This could be another Monaco. So that's the reason why I can't predict right now, because all of this.
That's your job. That is your job as the Oracle.
You got
Read
one
the
job.
fine print.
Everything is
One job.
clouded right now. Everything is clouded.
You know why? It's because your
In-
fucking
in
hair is being
mystery.
pulled back so tight. Can't think. Just can't think. My hair is so tight.
But that's my point.
Wow.
Baku is going
You-
to tell me if it's going to be a 3-horse race or they're out of here.
All right.
Well, I don't accept your non-committal answer, but I'd like to hear what Walker has to say.
Well, I mean, I agree. If they continue to do well, then it will be a 3-horse race, and if they do not do well, then it will not. So I think our local prophet here is right on the money. Here's the thing. So right now, the difference between first and third place in the Constructors' Championship is 39 points. To me, that's a 3-horse race. As of right now, that is a 3-horse race. And I don't think you can qualify it as anything other. You have Red Bull struggling. They have now not just one driver who can't seem to get shit going. They have 2 drivers who are seriously having trouble figuring out their car. You have McLaren who, some weekends they kill it, and most weekends they fuck something up, right? Strategy, personalities, whatever it is, they can't seem to really dial in strong, dominant weekends. And you have Ferrari, who's just kind of, they're there. They're consistent. They haven't been great, but Charles has shown the last few weekends, and even Carlos, they've had some solid finishes. And they are consistently in the middle of the top, right? But sometimes that's all you need to kind of maintain the pressure. And if you have Red Bull at 446, you have McLaren at 438, and you have Ferrari at 407. Again, 39 points apart between the top 3, and you have one bad weekend for Red Bull, let's say, one bad weekend for any of those teams, and it can dramatically change that order, right? But you have 2 cars in the top 3, all of a sudden that's what, 30 something points? Is that more than 30? That's more than 39 points. You have a first and third or a second and third, all of a sudden that's major points towards that championship. So I think it's absolutely a 3-horse race. I hope it stays that way, but time will tell. Anyways, thanks, Mike. Love the question. For everyone listening, don't forget to check out our Discord. Link is in the show notes. Go chat with us. Drop us some questions for the next episode. Moving on. You know who else had an impressive weekend? Was Kimi Antonelli. For all of you watching, FP1 started with a bang.
It started with a bang. It started with a bang. That's a bad look. I wonder how. Yeah, like I don't doubt that he's a great driver. He's probably a fantastic driver. But Toto was sitting there watching that happen, and his ass fell out. He was like, "Did I make this call? Like, do we have another Lance Stroll on our hands?" Like, there's a lot of drivers who've come up that looked like they were going to be absolute monsters, and then they got in an F1 car and just shit the bed. I hope that's not the case. I'm a Mercedes fan. I really hope that they are able to rein that in. I think it might have been a little bit of overconfidence on his side, because I think that he thought that car was a little grippier than it was. Potentially, if Monza had not been resurfaced and that wasn't a gravel trap, that he wouldn't have eaten as much shit. That being said, it's not a good look. Not for your first time out. Second lap, second flyer, and he was in the wall. Like, that's... But in his defense, he was second in the wall, because first in the wall was the safety car.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
I agree.
You see all those memes of see all those memes with like, Indy safety car versus F1 safety car
Drifting.
like you can't do that anymore. Doesn't hold true. Ed, you got any thoughts on young Kimi and his debut?
Well,
According
honestly,
to you,
I
you
agree
just
with
fucking send it. You're just like, well, if you're not racing, you're not winning.
You're not first
No,
or
well-
last.
Well, the thing is, like, he was trying to impress. Not only, the Mercedes camp, but it's a home race for him. So he's so stoked. He's going to race next year. He got the seat. He's flying on cloud 9, and he thinks nothing wrong is going to happen to him. And guess what? That's what the Parabolica is going to do to you. You make one mistake on that corner. Like, it's just a weird corner in itself. Like, goes tight at the start. The apex is so tight, and then as you exit, you make one mistake, you'll fly off immediately. I've run that track in the sim day in, day out, and that's the hardest corner for me. So he was pushing, he was happy, he was on cloud 9, home race. As long as, let's say, he's not another Lance Stroll or another Logan Sargent, too early to say. He doesn't have enough laps in him in order to really say that he might be that. But I don't know. For me, it's going to be looking at the rest of the races this season and see if he gets more seat time and get better. It's too early. It's second lap. He had pace, so I'm gonna give him that. But people make mistakes, especially starting.
Did you guys see the picture of Toto holding him as they were looking at the data on the screen? His arm around him. No. Oh, you gotta look this
I didn't
up.
see it.
I will look this up.
It's like, buddy, find someone who holds you like Toto holds Kimi. It was intimate.
I wish my wife loved me that much.
It was like, it was almost like his surrogate, like little son. I don't know. Where is it? I need to find it.
No, I need to find it.
No, you need to find it. Okay, we'll find. Oh, did I find it?
Did you find it?
No, I didn't. Hold on, I'll find it. Anyways, you know what? We'll post it on the Discord so everyone can come over and check out what we're talking about.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see it now. Wow.
Do you? Send the link.
Yeah.
Send the link.
Yeah, send it. Give me a second.
So Kimi had, a mixed weekend. Red Bull did not have a good weekend either.
No.
I feel like there's a lot. I feel like we can dedicate a whole episode on the demise of Red Bull. And maybe that's what we'll talk about next week because we are going into an off week. But no one was looking good. And do you hear Sergio chirping Max?
I did.
He's like,
that was quite frisky of him. He's like, oh, now he's finally in the same boat that I've been in for weeks. Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to touch on a couple of things. One, K-Mag with the suspension for next week. Crappy, but also awesome because we get to see Ollie Behrman again, which is going to be dope. And real quick, I wanted to touch on Franco Colapinto. He came in there in that Williams car and got 12th place. Is
that why you're rocking the Williams gear today?
I had to rock the Williams gear for that guy. We didn't even know his name last week, and he's already beating Danny Ricciardo in a Williams. He was only 20 seconds behind Albon, but not bad for his first race at the Temple of Speed. That's not an easy feat. And I listened to the radio message between him and James Vowles after the race. James Vowles is somebody I could get behind. He's somebody that I could believe. And when he sees greatness in you, he has no problem telling you all of the great things that you just It was a very encouraging conversation that he had of you did the exact job that we asked of you and you did it to the nth degree. And it was a good representation of why I think somebody like Carlos Sainz was okay going to Williams. I think James Vowles has a lot to do with where that team's going to go in the next little bit. And that just proves that, just like Freddie Vasseur, the who you hire to run your team means everything because you can change the trajectory of a team very quickly. The team might have to, catch up a little bit, but I think that that it starts with the top down, and I think that James Vowles is an absolute perfect fit for Williams.
Under the tutelage of Toto Wolff, like he took a team and look what happened. 7 or 8-time constructors champion. So yeah, hats off to Williams as well, and Colapinto. Good debut race.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Vowles a little bit in the past, but I think he's been transformative to that team, and I think, he caught a little heat this past weekend for, kind of talking a little shit about Mick Schumacher, which, poor Mick, man, that guy can't catch a break anywhere, like nowhere. And so, but yeah, I feel like he's just the kind of guy that says, very clearly and succinctly and logically just says it how it is, and it's very just analytical. It's nothing personal. It's just like,
it's just business,
special. Baby. Yeah, it's just business. And I feel like that quote was a little bit taken out of context, because if you read the entire transcript, he kind of alluded to neither choice being particularly special, but the reason they went with him was because, history in the academy and things like that. So I think people also just focused on that one little soundbite, but nevertheless, Mick is not getting any love. We are off. Well, not we are off, but no race. We got a bye week next week. We're heading into Baku, so we will do a little preview for Baku next week. Boys, we can't do name that sponsor because
no, he has to catch up. Thomas is so far behind. We can't start getting double points on him. It's just an unfair.
I mean, on the other hand, arguably it wouldn't even matter if he was here because the man cannot score. But any last words for today?
Nah, just the same old thing I say every time. If you guys haven't yet, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, rate, all that fun stuff. You can catch us anywhere. YouTube's been popping lately. We're in Spotify, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, wherever the fuck you get stuff. We're there. Come hit us up. We appreciate the love and support, guys.
For the record, we are not on Twitch.
Oh, yeah. I have an account. We just don't do anything there.
Okay.
I did secure all things.
Oh, okay. All the things.
Yeah, everything.
Hey,
we'll get
there.
You
can come be our first follower.
Ooh.
Free shirt for the first follower.
Hey-ho!
On Twitch. But only if you live locally.
Yeah. We won't
No overseas shipping.
Yeah.
No.
Pick up only.
All right, boys. This has been fun. This has also been Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, follow us on all the socials. Drew just said all this stuff, but I'm so used to saying it at the end that I'm just going to say it again. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Ciao for now.
It's lights out and away we go.